with all due respect.
Hey, we're Josh Ortegan and Greg Gaines, and this is With All Due Respect, the show where we keep it real about health, fitness, and performance. From weight loss to sports development, we're covering the conversations that matter.
Follow us on Instagram at Phenom Fitness, PHNM Fitness, and visit www.phenomfit.com to check out our training programs, coaching, and gear built for real results. Let's get into it.
All right, I'm done making the mistakes of not recording the cool stuff that happens before we even go live. So I'm hitting record, and guys, this is With All Due Respect 71. We know what number it is. Mike Wine, guys, I'm proud to announce that Mike Wines is not dead. He is alive, and he's
He's
coming out of his
living.
shell. He's coming out of his shell of crazy work change.
Feels
Um,
weird to be awake when it's actually light outside.
oh
Yeah,
man, is
I'm
it so?
sure.
Have you been working crazy shifts in ER?
Yeah, a lot of like getting off in 3 and 4 in the morning and stuff like that. So,
Mike,
Could
does
never.
that drive you insane? Because I know you're like,
well, I think a lot of people would say, "Oh, that's terrible," but I also look at it as a good opportunity to practice what I preach. So, utilizing different habits to ensure that I'm able to sleep and fall asleep when I should and wake up when I should, and optimizing performance when I'm in the ER talking to people. And so, just a good opportunity to practice what I already preach to patients.
uh, in 11 days, you start at a practice where people can actually come see you.
Mhm.
And I'm so excited about that for
I know. I
people.
feel like we've been waiting like 5 years for like finally.
Mike, we talk about this all the time. I can't wait to have people sit down with Mike, whether it's our clients or our friends, family members, because as a PA, you can help so many people from a lens of medicine that is, we think it's around, but it's not. It's not around. Um, from helping people with your knowledge of lifestyle supplements, now medicine, because there is a place for medical intervention. Like there is a place for that. I'm not going to tell somebody who's really struggling with depression to never take a medicine that helps intervene that to move on. Like I'm not that stupid, right? I'm stupid, but I'm not that stupid. But I think being in Greenville, we are so excited to have people willing to go, and because nowadays, Mike, people are willing to travel to get help from somebody they trust and somebody that can really help them, that'll sit and listen. Most important, sit and listen to them. I can't tell you how many people I've come that have come to me. Mike, I've now gotten actually pretty decent at reading blood work.
Yeah.
I am not the guy. It's mostly friends or people that come to me, and now mostly it's the simple stuff, right? Um, Inflammation markers, hormone levels, right? Things that you've taught me that I'm not giving medical advice. I'm just saying, hey, you probably should look at these things and
Mhm.
research what they mean, and maybe here's some supplements that can help you, and here's what it is, right? Um, and that's been from your education, but it's been from people that come to me and they go, I got my blood work, it showed up in my chart. I don't have a follow-up for a month. And then when they do have a follow-up, it's a 15-minute meeting, and the guy goes, eat Mediterranean diet and don't eat so much sugar. And then they go on to the next person, and I'm just like, what are we doing?
Mhm.
So I just want to start off by saying I am sure we're not as happy as you are, right? To be going into a job in a profession where like you're going to be able to help people. That's got to feel good.
Mhm.
And with a guy that you like you're a guy you're like, okay, this guy's on board with what I'm doing,
Yep, absolutely.
you know?
And
So,
don't get me wrong, we do help people in the ER. If you have an
oh,
emergency,
oh yes. Yeah, I
you'll
imagine.
still get lots of good help in the ER too.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I know a guy. Yeah, I know a guy that was a worked in the ER and a thoracic surgeon. And when you have an impaled dart through your chest, you probably want that thoracic surgeon removing that out of your chest,
Yeah.
right? But we'll get down to it, guys. One of the greatest things I like to do is to post in the group questions for Mike. And and we get all kinds of questions. I'm gonna go pull up some stuff. Um, but let me pull it up. But I feel like there's a large growing population of people who just want to age better than their parents and their grandparents did. And I feel like that's the people who contact us in the group and want to do things, right? So one of the things I'm going to start off with, or Gray, you start off with what you want. We got 28 questions through here, 28 posts.
Read a question. I mean, I know that we kind of initiated this conversation based on like health optimization alone, but I feel like that's such a broad topic. So, is there a question that's underneath that specifically that someone asked? I know there was a supplements question, but we did an episode on that a while back. Um, More blood work questions. You have the questions in front of you. What were they?
Um, One of the big ones is I'm going to choose mine. What does because I gotta go through. Um, I want to talk about specifically blood work, and I know that's a large topic. Um, I quit giving supplement advice, really. One, it's not my forte. Supplements are not my forte. People are like, what do you take for supplements? I'm like magnesium at night, creatine. Uh, and I was taking that when I've cut off caffeine, not cut it off, but decreased it. And you had me do some things that took about a week for me to kind of be like, I'm good. But the importance of blood work before we do supplements to see what's really going on the inside of the body. You tell a lot of people that come to you, and I've heard you because I've been in calls with you, when people say, well, I just really think my hormones are off, or I think my cortisol levels off, or oh man, I just feel like this is off, this is off. And you go, well, do you got the blood work to show it before we start guessing?
Hmm.
When you work with people, is that the first thing you're going to is, hey, let's get some blood work done? And what is the importance for you as you practice medicine to recommend people to get regular blood work and why?
Short answer to your first question is no. I probably don't start with blood work. One of my first mentors in medicine, he would always emphasize don't measure chaos. And so if you have someone who is eating the standard American diet and they say, well, I want to check all my micronutrient levels, and you can do that. You can check all the B vitamins and the fat soluble vitamins. But the point is, does it even matter if you're not having adequate intake of those things? And I would say probably not. No, because we know you're probably deficient in one thing or another. Now, in medicine, obviously, you can't hide what's in the blood. And so, to kind of expand on that, meaning that someone can say that they feel good, but their labs can say another story. And a lot of people on Instagram look a certain way and they appear healthy because of their body composition. But when you do their lab work, that's not always the case. So, that's where I think blood work does have a role in the conversation. But like we've talked about many times, there's probably 8, 10, 12 things that every human being needs from an input standpoint daily in order to regulate all the other complex machinery that's going on underneath the surface. And so sometimes labs are the buy-in to show people, hey, these are the things that are off in terms of subsystems, whether it's insulin in the pancreas or um, cortisol rhythm in the adrenals or whatever the thing is. But it's also understanding that there are limitations to lab work as well. And so, as an example, when we talked about cortisol, people will come and say, well, I'm always super fatigued, and my doctor checked my thyroid. And so he said, I don't know why you're so tired. Here's Adderall, because Adderall is a stimulant, so you won't be fatigued anymore. Well, the other piece of that puzzle is thyroid does control energy production, but so do the adrenals and so do the mitochondria. And so then we kind of have to unpack those two pieces. And just simplistically, the mitochondria make energy from calories. So if somebody's not eating enough food or they're a chronic yo-yo dieter, we have to start with that before we just give you Adderall and assume that you have enough gas in the tank. And then the second piece is with the adrenals, going back to lab work, your doc might test your cortisol. And so they'll say, come into the lab first thing in the morning. We want to see what your cortisol is. Well, the tricky part with cortisol is it's a diurnal hormone, just like many of your hormones, meaning that it peaks and troughs at different points of the day. And so you can test this. It doesn't have to be blood. You can test it in saliva. So you can do this test at home 4 times a day. You swab your cheek, you basically check your saliva, your salivary cortisol, and then you see what that whole rhythm looks like. Because what really matters is not just one point in time, it's the total area under the curve, meaning do you have adequate cortisol production over the course of the day? And is that rhythm matched for the light cycle that occurs outside? So, like first thing in the morning, you have this nice spike in cortisol, goes down as the day goes on. That rhythm can get flipped, or that rhythm can be totally flat over the course of the day. So, that's just an example of just because your doctor tested your blood work and one thing looked normal that we associate with energy, aka thyroid, that's not always the whole story. And similarly, with just thyroid, your doctor will probably only test TSH because that's what insurance covers. And similarly, that's maybe the only thing that they know how to bill to get covered. And so it's knowing what ICD-10 codes are billable with certain labs to get them covered with insurance. And if you don't know how to do that, then it's knowing where to send the patient so they can get the other follow-up labs. So, for example, if I wanted to test somebody's thyroid, it's looking at the whole cascade: TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and also thyroid antibodies, thyroglobulin, and TPO, thyroid peroxidase. So, just as an example, if somebody said, my doctor's tested my thyroid, and I say, cool, do you have those 6 markers that we can look at? Well, I have TSH. Okay, that's fine. So, it's knowing in that whole schematic and talking through that with the patient. I do this in the ER currently with patients where they say, well, can I just have an MRI of my shoulder because it hurts? I can physically do that, but you'll get billed about $6,000 because insurance won't deem it medically necessary. So you have to walk out the door and wait to have this scheduled outpatient. Or you can go to an at-cost imaging center and pay $500 and get an MRI right now, as long as you have a script for an MRI that your doc can provide. So it's knowing all of these tools in medicine and then telling the patient, hey, you don't need me to use this tool. You can go and get this blood work right now. You can go on Quest and LabCorp right now and get these labs. You just pay out of pocket and it's a fee for service. So that's a bigger ball of wax just in that lab conversation. But it's understanding just because your doctor checked your labs and everything's normal, quote unquote, because that's what we always hear, that doesn't explain the full story. People can still have symptoms. The digging that needs to take place often doesn't get done because of insurance. And so then it's knowing how to go around that and still get the data that you need, but only if the person's actually doing all the things that will shake out the relevant objective markers that you need. Meaning that if there's 1,000 things that are wrong, you need to do all the basics first and then figure out what 4 or 5 things are still there and then work on those.
It reminds me of a conversation we've had when people have come and be like, well, my women will come and they'll be like, well, I can't lose weight because obviously my hormones are off. Almost like they're hoping it's their hormones because the last thing they want to do is think it's their habits, right? Because I've had women be like, a friend of mine that calls me all the time, we talk about nutrition. She goes, dang, Josh, my hormones are fine. And I was really hoping it wasn't like I wasn't working out and wasn't eating hard enough. I just wanted to be my hormones so I could get it fixed.
Hmm.
And you told me a few times, I was like, hey, even if it is their hormones, start eating more whole foods, fruits and vegetables, lay off some, decrease some of the wheat and dairy, start walking, get more sunlight, address your sleep. That'll probably fix a large percentage of the issues you have. If the hormones are not, you're probably going to feel a lot better. And you don't have to go through the labs and the medicine and the process and all of that. It's just a lot of people don't want to do that. They would rather get some sort of intervention. Um,
The hard message in that is I think you can remind people that their habits dictate their hormones. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't want to accept.
That's like, I love that quote that Allison always says, genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. And I think people fail to realize that their habits are contributing a lot more to how they're feeling and how they're looking than they would ever want to admit.
how do you plan on, this is a philosophical question. How do you plan on balancing both sides with people that you consult or talk to? Because there is a value to the medical intervention,
Mhm.
unbelievable value that saves people's lives.
Mhm.
But you have to play that, well, what's your lifestyle and what are you doing regularly? And balance between people who just say that you can tell they just want the medicine
Mhm.
and they don't mind being on seven different meds versus or this person will make some life. How do you balance that so you know you're doing what's best by people?
I think the first question I always start with folks is, are you interested in looking at other options besides just taking a drug to mask your symptoms? And if they say yes, then I'll explain, well, that will require you to live in a different way than you currently live now. Because the lifestyle that you're leading now has brought us to this point where you have this subsequent diagnosis, whatever X or Y diagnosis is. And so that's number one, taking responsibility for what we do or don't do daily and recognizing that, hey, I do play an active role in my health. And so I can also play an active role in my healing and my recovery. And so once we acknowledge that, well, then the world is your oyster because then you can understand that every single decision that I make is either moving me towards the end goal of not having to take maybe as much of a medicine, because not every medicine you can get off of, and there's some meds that you don't want to get off of if you've been on them a long time. Thyroid hormone. If you're stable on thyroid hormone, I've got no interest in you coming off that. Really none, as long as your thyroid looks healthy and well. So there's certain conversations there, but then some people will say, well, I've been on this blood pressure medicine for 40 years. Right, that's great. Nothing wrong with that. Let's just try to get you healthier on the medicine. Maybe you end up only needing half the dose because the less of a medicine we take, the lower the side effect profile. And then in elderly, obviously, polypharmacy enters the conversation. And so if we can get you off some meds, maybe not all, less chance they're interacting. So that's kind of the question I always start with is, are you interested in learning more about that? And if you are, then let's go down that rabbit hole. And it will come then, I kind of have a kind of a framework that I work through in terms of initially starting with people and giving them some information on, hey, here's a general nutrition structure. I'm not telling you what you should eat every single meal. I'm not a nutritionist, but in terms of just general principles of food, these are things to think about. And then this is what I want us to start with in terms of your sleep. We don't even get into activity yet. It's just basically the things you're already doing, sleeping and eating. Let's talk about those first, and then we kind of build from there.
Yeah,
Of the people you,
everybody's going to eat, right? And if you
yeah.
stress that, I tell clients all the time, I said, hey, you're going to eat tomorrow. You have the choice. Like
Hmm.
you're going to eat tomorrow. You're not going to skip it. Um, Great, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Just gonna ask of the people that you, I'm just curious, honestly. Of the people that you asked that question to, how many people would you say, like percentage or 1 out of 10, actually say, yeah, I would like to change my lifestyle?
I would say the folks that I've seen, at least in my current subspecialty, is um, young females for sure. Very
Hmm.
interested. Those, especially who are dealing with chronic symptoms.
Yeah.
Um, Young males are a little bit more hesitant, it seems, but they're open to it. And it seems to be a definite generation piece. So there is kind of the conversation with more elderly patients that they've been told by their doctor, this is just what happens to your body. This is just how things are. Nothing's going to change. I can't tell you the number of type 2 diabetics that I've talked to who have been told that this is just how things are. You just take this medicine for the rest of your life and your pancreatic function slowly decreases, and then that's how things go. And
Yeah.
so then the first thing I tell them, you do know this is entirely 100% reversible early on, and that just depends upon what you choose to eat. And so that goes back to a lot of the messages that are sent from um, current medical societies and the funding that goes to those societies and who's paying for advertisements and all those pieces of the puzzle. And so, as such, the population sometimes has a hard time sorting through the noise. And so I'd say that's probably what I'm at least seeing now. I just saw a patient yesterday, very, very medically complex. Um, she has Ehlers-Danlos, which is like you have really stretchy, hypermobile joints. But then she also has another number of other things like POTS. If people aren't familiar with that, is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So you stand up and basically your autonomic nervous system can't regulate your blood pressure and your heart rate. So your heart speeds up and your pressure drops and you pass out a lot. And so she has that. And then she likely has some like high histamine. It's called mast cell activation syndrome. So that's getting more popular now, and people are doing a lot of research on that. Anyway, she has all these different complex conditions, and she's seen all the ologists. And so when she first came in, she said, um, I just have a really bad experience with medicine, with doctors, with people not really taking the time to listen, especially in the ER. I said, yeah, I understand that. And the ER does get pretty busy. But we kind of just sat and had a 20 or 30-minute conversation. And I said, has anybody explained to you how all this stuff is interlinked? Like all of these different complexities are all part of the same puzzle of you. And so I think when you start to take some time, which is the important variable in this equation with patients, and you sit down, like you said, Josh, and actually listen to them, as the old saying goes, the patient will give you the answers. We just need to listen. I think that's when people really start to unpack their story more and actually fill in the blanks to where you can start to explain to them, here's how all this comes together. And so that gets into a much bigger ball of wax because physicians only have 10 or 15 minutes and they have certain thresholds they have to meet daily. And so it's not entirely easy for them to solve this problem under our current insurance-based guidelines. And so this is part of a much bigger conversation.
Yeah. You are seeing a lot of the cash pay things pop up
Mhm.
that are working in health optimization, and it's cash pay. And I think at the cost of insurance and things, people are willing to pay that. It's interesting you talk about the generational thing. I saw a study that had an age bracket that was a younger age bracket, Gray, maybe even maybe slightly younger than your age bracket. Mike, how old are you
Calling me old?
now? Mike,
So what?
how old are you now?
33?
Okay, 33, 28, 48. All right, I think we get
I'm
pretty,
29.
I guess you just, yes, 29. Well, that's a, a, a range
Yeah.
that talk about the younger age, maybe possibly younger than Gray, that 53% of them are no longer drinking alcohol.
Mm.
Yeah. No,
I
it's
didn't see
true.
that.
Like no, not
Yeah.
drinking alcohol is this big thing of being sober. And I think
Or,
that, or alcohol free, not necessarily sober, but
I
alcohol.
was just gonna say it's even just like sober curious. Like a lot of them are not taking on the same thing that my generation did. It's just like far less alcohol, or it's like they, only drink on a Saturday or something. Because I would even say like that kind of started with people my age, and it's slowly just gotten as a higher percentage as ages go down.
That's probably the age group too that you're talking about, Mike, of young women who are interested in like they want to make the lifestyle change. Where people my age or older still have the, well, my doctor said it. Well, he's a doctor. Well,
Yeah.
but he's a doctor, right? Well, how do you know? Well, he's a doctor. I don't understand. We still have this, when it kind of, I'm a cynic. I'm not proud of it. I think there's negatives to being a cynic. I turned out as a skeptic and I aged into a cynic. And I've always said, man, in this society, we used to always trust our banker, our preacher, and our doctor. And now those are the three people I don't trust the least, right?
Hmm.
Like I don't trust my banker, my doctor, or my preacher anymore. And and there's a struggle in those generations. I would say Mike's generation, maybe younger than Gray, my generation, generation older than me, because I've had the conversations with clients where they come to me with blood work and this guy lifts, he works out, he takes creatine, and they go, my doctor just told me I'm in liver failure or kidney failure. And I'm like, no, you're
Yeah.
not. Well, they're the doctor. I'm like, oh man, I get it. I understand. I'm not telling you, I'm not saying you're not, but like, you know, you lift weights and you take creatine. I promise you, you're not in kidney failure. I know, like, that's just a hard conversation with somebody. Or, I had a doctor recently tell a client, um, his LDLs were 104. It's not really high. I mean, 99 is the cutoff, right? And 104 is pretty, I mean, that's a subjective thing. We had a cholesterol podcast recently, Mike, I'd like for you to listen to, where she talked about how the numbers have changed for cholesterol over years so they could prescribe more, like the like, and he's like, well, my doctor told me to get off whey protein, to no longer eat eggs. Anything over creatine 3 grams is not well researched enough, but he offered me a statin.
Of course. Shocker.
And like, dude, I remember reading his text and I'm like, I don't even know where to go here. He's like, well, Josh, he's a doctor.
Well, part of the impetus for that is because if physicians meet certain metrics within the system and they have certain patients that are medically compliant, aka their labs are within the standardized reference ranges that they should be in, then there's a financial incentive for that.
You talked about POTS earlier, and I recently read a study that talked about the increased rise of POTS diagnosis since 20 and
After
21.
COVID. Hmm.
And I'm not saying anything because I already got banned for 2 months on Facebook. I'm just saying that the study said it's because we're getting better at diagnosing POTS. I'm just saying it, guys. Okay. Um, let's just move on from that before I get banned. Uh, I'm trying to run it. But Mike, one thing people talked about, and I've had lots of conversation is we talk. I love the conversation about the generational piece about the people that all in on the doctor. My generation's kind of getting skeptic to the younger people saying, I'm thinking it's time for me to advocate for my own health. Like, I want to make the decision of what's best for me here. Maybe that statin at 104 LDL isn't the best thing for me.
Hmm.
That moves into the conversation around health optimization. There are a lot of people who say, hey, I just don't want to survive and stay within the numbers and live my life just barely making it and die when I'm 70. I want to burn the candle hot and feel awesome, feel great. They want to play pickleball and be active and optimize their health the best they can. And they get into alternative forms of medicine, whether they're getting into HRT or they're getting into TRT or they go and they want to get L-carnitine injections or, all these kind of things that people are getting to optimize their health. When people really want to optimize their health, understanding that we still live in a society where 67% of people are overweight. So this is not a large population of people. What are some things that people are doing a lot of the things right? And what I say by a lot of the things right, they're lifting weights. They're going for walks. They're getting good sunlight. They're sleeping. Um, maybe they still casual drink alcohol here and there. They're still living their life, but they want to take it to that next level of feeling better. I deal with a lot of clients like that. Those are actually the easiest clients to work with because
Love those clients.
to have health is important.
Hmm.
If you're that avatar person that's, hey, I'm already exercising, I'm kind of doing some things right, I kind of understand what I'm doing, but I want to go into the next level. Are there any recommendations you would have of that person to say, hey, if you really want to optimize health, start here? What would you be your recommendation to that person? Because I think that's a lot of people that listen to this podcast. They're doing things right. They just want to go further.
Um, from a conventional medicine standpoint, I don't know that I have much to offer. Outside of that, um, I think that would be a conversation that we would. I'm a big like questionnaire person. So like when I sit down with that person, I typically will have them fill out a number of different questionnaires, and that'll give me an idea. I mean, you are seeing doctors' offices expanding their questionnaires now and asking questions about, do you feel, I actually just saw one the other day, do you feel like your home is making you sick, or there's something you're being exposed to that's making you sick? Um, or do you feel like you have adequate social connections? And so they're asking more of these important questions that are very relevant to people's current state of health. But that's typically where I start with some pretty detailed questionnaires to get an idea of on the broad span of this person in terms of all of their inputs on a daily basis, what's their lowest score and what's their highest score. And so everybody has a different skill ranking, so to speak. You play video games and each character has a different kind of asset in terms of what they're best at and what they're worst at. And so that's usually if somebody's like, well, I'm pretty mediocre across the board, where would I start? 100% sleep.
Okay.
Like we've talked about in the past, sleep is the only legal performance enhancing drug. And above and beyond that, then I start to get into the conversation of, does this person have untreated sleep apnea? So if you're a middle-aged male that likes to lift and just be huge all the time, you got to get your sleep apnea addressed and figure out if you have it. And and if you've done that, and you can do at-home tests, everybody's like, oh, I'm not going to a lab. I can't sleep in a lab. That's old school. None of that's even done
Really?
anymore. It's all at home testing. You can wear something on your wrist, something on your hand. If that's abnormal, then they'll send you to a lab. So I always tell
I did
people,
not, I've avoided a sleep test because I don't want to go somewhere and sleep. I'm dead
But
serious.
this is Josh's question. Josh needed to know exactly what he needed to do next, and now you've cured him.
No,
He's
no, that's not
cured.
my question. It's a lot of people. I got a lot of jujitsu friends that do jujitsu. They just want to feel more awesome than they are right now. They work out, they do things. Health optimizing and feeling great as they get older is important. But yes, I have avoided sleep testing because I don't want to go anywhere.
you don't have to.
Dang it.
Look at that.
So that's the first piece. And we can probably split this between males and females. Let's do that. So for males, number one, figure out if you have sleep apnea. And again, like I said, you don't have to go anywhere. You'll basically get overnight pulse oximetry. People say, well, my doctor won't do that. Go online, go buy a ring. It's called a Looky ring, Lookee. It's continuous pulse oximetry data. The newer Apple Watches do it, the newer Oura rings do it, but just know those are 10-minute sampling frequencies. They're not continuous sampling frequencies, so you could miss apneic events throughout the night. If you have significant sleep apnea, you'll have multiple apneic events. It'll catch some of them, but you can go buy this Looky ring. It's maybe 120 bucks. And you need to wear that for multiple nights. So you need to wear that for at least a week, 2 weeks, and then see what that data looks like across the board. And so if you're having multiple desaturations over the course of a night, you can look up and see how many of them need to occur in order for you to actually have a diagnosis of sleep apnea. And then moving beyond that, people will say, well, I'm not going to do the CPAP. It's too restrictive. Now they have little nasal pillows that are just like little nasal cannulas that fit under your nose. It's not the whole mask. They have dental devices which show 30 to 40% efficacy, I believe. There's tons of different options, different pillows, different ways that we can adjust the airway. You can go see a dentist and talk to them about it. So that's a huge conversation to have. But basically, if you have undiagnosed sleep apnea, you are lowering your testosterone voluntarily as a male. I'll just go ahead and say that.
Okay.
Uh,
How much does that move the needle then?
in terms of sleep apnea,
How much, what can somebody move testosterone? And I know this, that's like me asking my physical therapist, hey, my shoulder hurts. How long is it going to take? They'll say like 2 weeks to 12, right? Because he's so tired of me asking that. Can you estimate an area of like how much sleep apnea can affect a male testosterone?
I think if somebody is hypogonadal, like diagnostically gonadal, meaning that your testosterone is below the reference range, like if you're in the 250s, is that going to bring you back into the 700s? No. But it's likely that you will need a lower dose of testosterone therapy to normalize gonadal function. And so lower side effect profile, lower risk of hypercoagulability. And then along with that, you will likely improve all the other subsystems, including thyroid and adrenal function, that will benefit from good sleep. So males are like, what's my testosterone? It's just like the same thing as like, what do you bench? That's all males care about. But subsequently, all those other subsystems talk to the HPG or the hypothalamus pituitary and gonadal axis that causes testosterone production. And so if you completely destroy your adrenal glands, and so you're just dry scooping pre-workout to go have a walk around the block, over time, that's probably going to have an influence on your testosterone production, same as the sleep apnea. So I would say you could probably expect anywhere, depending upon your degree of apnea, anywhere from kind of a 10% to maybe a 25% improvement with testosterone.
That is significant.
I don't
Talk.
have data to support that. I don't have data to
Oh, I
support
know
that.
what you're saying. You're just using your experience, right?
But
But
you can see a significant jump in testosterone from sleep alone, normal sleep or just sleep deprivation. So if you can now change somebody's sleep deprivation due to the apnea, I would think you'd have a similar jump.
yeah, what Matthew Walker's book say? Like 4 nights of less than 6 hours can decrease your testosterone levels by like 22%,
Mhm.
something like that.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, starting with sleep.
Yeah. And sorry, so we should go back. So that was the guys basically. Where would you start? Just get rid of the sleep apnea if you have it. And then moving beyond that, for males and females, I would enter in with the blood sugar conversation. The vast majority of humans need to eat multiple meals spread throughout the day with protein, fat, and fiber, and then fill in the gaps with fruit as well as constituent shakes or smoothies.
Okay.
So that would kind of be the next piece. And when you're talking about blood sugar balance, this isn't just about like type 2 diabetes. Now we're linking in adrenal function. because blood sugar and adrenals are tightly linked. And so if you're riding the blood sugar roller coaster all day long, you're increasing adrenal output every time you have a low blood sugar episode. So the more low blood sugar episodes you have throughout the day, this ties back to sleep because now you're going to have that same blood sugar roller coaster overnight. And subsequently, with every cortisol rise to bring blood sugar back up, you're going to wake up. So now the apnea and the blood sugar is directly linked.
Well, we've had this conversation before,
Yep.
and I've really been proactive when I'm talking to people around sleep, but balancing blood sugar throughout the day with even meals. Um, so many women, this is more women than men, even though I do have a guy that was at like 5 to 700 caffeine. I recently had it started with a guy that he logs his food every day for me, and he was at 500 to 700 milligrams of caffeine a day. And he didn't sleep very well at night.
Hmm.
And we started addressing the food and how to cut back caffeine down to 300.
Mhm.
But we hit more meals during the day, got his protein up to 200 with those meals is better food intake. But I feel so many females get caught in this caffeine all morning, snack, big dinner, can't sleep, don't feel great. So they do more caffeine, small snack, big dinner, glass of wine. And that cycle per, just maximizes over time that when you can get a high protein breakfast, a lunch, even just a high protein breakfast and a regular balanced lunch,
Hmm.
things start to happen that are amazing for females. The difference.
I hate absolutes, but as a general principle for people, if you're a human and you need multiple uppers and downers throughout the day, you lack stability in your life. So you lack stability in your blood sugar, and then subsequently you lack stability in your sleep cycles overnight. So that would kind of be the third piece for both sexes. You need adequate calories in general. If you undereat during the day, I'm not surprised at all that someone has poor sleep at night. So you have to have adequate fuel to enter into the sleep period overnight and continue that sleep. So those would kind of be the three pieces, at least for males, and then two for females. And then if it's just females, I would say kind of the one piece that I would definitely look to examine. Would be a lot of women don't get blood work as frequently as males. They don't like needles. Someone that Josh, you and I both know, resisted this for a long time and then finally went and did their blood work. And so, anyways,
It's
that would just
me.
be
It's me.
something I would encourage all women to definitely do that with a physical. And I think women definitely across the board don't in medicine at least don't have their concerns adequately addressed all the time. I think they're written off as stress or aging. And so I think we do a bad job of this in medicine of actually working things up. And versus many women get dismissed. And I could be wrong. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I think there's a statistical significant difference in males versus females in terms of the degree of inadequate medical workups that women get versus men, not for emergent complaints, for chronic complaints. So that would
Want
be the other piece, just making sure they're advocating for themselves so that they are getting an adequate workup.
to know what my hypothesis is about that?
Yeah.
So most of us don't have a PCP. I don't see a PCP. I go to my gynecologist. And I
Mhm.
think I would say the relationship there is probably because majority of our gynos are women. And so like
Yeah.
they're listening to us. It's hard in my opinion to find a PCP. I mean, there are women PCPs, of course, but they're mostly men from my experience. And so like I can speak for myself and majority of my friends, we don't go for a regular checkup with a PCP. Like I go to my gynecologist for everything,
I don't blame you.
you know? So I think that could be a piece of it as well. And then, you don't necessarily go to your gynecologist to get regular routine blood work. They do it, but you don't necessarily go for it.
Yeah, and I
So,
think that goes back to what Josh originally said. We need to be better at listening.
yep,
You know,
definitely.
it's really interesting. I do find it, I never correlated this. Women do mostly get well, that's just part of getting older.
That's just how
Well,
things are.
Or yeah, it's like, or you've had kids, so like that should you're just gonna have to accept that this is the way that you feel now because your body had kids. It's like no,
Yeah,
like you can still thrive after pregnancy and after having children.
right.
well, you're in your early 40s. That's just how it is. We're going, and I know she doesn't care if I talk about this. We're going through that with Rachel. Mike had a
Yeah.
great consult with her. where amazing changes have occurred. Here's the deal, y'all. Mike tells Rachel something, and it's like Jesus wrote it on the wall.
Same. If Mike tells me something, Jesus wrote it on the wall.
I could tell Rachel something over and over, and she's like, I don't know. Mike has a phone call together, and all of a sudden, she's on Thorn. She's getting her protein. She's paying attention to her sleep. She's had time. She used to be an Advil person. She's got some back issues, which she claims was from when Asher was born. They hit her with an epidural, and her back hasn't been the same since. Um, she's only had I think in the last month, she's had Advil twice. Inflammation is down, pain is better, sleep is better, supplements are better. She had really rough cycles. Cycle has improved all of it. Now she's all in on health optimization. I'm talking like from 2 to a 10. Went and got her hair color change. I mean, it's amazing what's going on, right?
Love that.
And she's like, I just don't want to. She goes, I just don't want to be like all my friends that say, oh, it's just part of being 43.
Yep.
She goes, I ain't down with that. I don't want to be that way.
Hmm.
Right. And going now, she's impatient, as me and Mike talked about. She's impatient about having everything happen right now.
Well, to clarify, I did not say that. So
Yeah.
I
Well,
never said
no,
she
I
was
said I can
impatient.
say she'll admit she's impatient. She started a testosterone cream. She's like, how come I don't feel like my testosterone went from 12 to 90 overnight? I'm like, oh, I get it. Yeah, the testosterone quit. Yeah, I get it. I'm on board with that. But I think there are more people like that, Mike, that want to be like, why do I got to settle for this? And you don't. One of my best friends, all we're trying to do every day is um, eat a high protein breakfast and go for a walk every morning. That's it. He's like, well, what else do I do? No, I want 28 days of just that. Just that. And we finally got him past the hump of, I don't know, maybe I'm just going to be overweight my whole life.
Mm.
Maybe I'm just going to be unhealthy and he said something to me, man, you get into the heart of hearts like when we got into it with Erica that lost 140 pounds. He sent me a text one time. He goes, Josh, I'm surrounded by people that love me, but I don't know if I love myself enough. And bro, I like read that text and was like, oh man, dude, like sounds like a country song, right?
The other part of that conversation is health is caught, it's not taught. And so when we have a generally accepted state of uh, mediocrity in society, then the average person will feel like, yeah, I mean, it's good enough. I'm just like everybody else walking around, no big deal. But I don't really feel that good. Is this really normal? And they look around and they think, yeah, I guess so. It's just the way it is. That's what I'm told. That's what my doctor says. And that's what everybody else looks like. So I guess it is.
Yeah,
And that's not true. And so that's where this is part of the reason why CrossFit was so beneficial because people saw those habits being enacted, and subsequently there's a trickle down effect. And so this gets into the whole generational piece of, your kids don't learn how to be healthy from school.
no,
They learn how to be healthy because they pick up those habits from their parents or from their peers or from someone
Hmm.
else. I mean, I'm sure you guys have a similar experience. You grew up playing sports, or you grew up in the home where your parents were having you eat certain ways, or somebody had said, "Hey, let's go to the gym and start working out one day." And then from there, it just snowballed and just took off. And so that's a very key piece of this puzzle that sometimes on this journey with people, they may have to pick new environments and they may have to pick new friends, which is uncomfortable. But if your buddy always wants to go out and drink and you're trying to lose weight, well, then that's a conversation you have to have with yourself and maybe with him too.
yeah,
That's why I love classes, like going and finding a gym that offers community because then it's not like you have to always go out and find a new friend, but you are automatically put into a group of new friends. So then you can kind of separate the two of like, yeah, this might be my going out buddy that I go and see occasionally, but then I'm around these people, 4 or 5 days per week, and I go home feeling a lot better.
Are you surprised that only 3% of people in society go to the gym 2 to 3 days a week?
Oh, that's an interesting stat. I didn't know
That
that.
is an interesting stat. Does
That's
that include
pretty
actually
tough.
going to a gym, or does that include people
Oh,
working out at home? Does that include?
something like between 3 and 7% of people, based on where they lived in the country,
Hmm.
um, went to a gym 2 to 3 days a week on average.
Wow.
I'd be curious to know if that's age stratified, because I'd be willing to
Hmm.
bet that number would probably be higher if somebody is 30 or less or
Yeah,
60
yeah.
or older.
Yeah, I don't know much about the study. It got posted around social, and obviously you got to look through the weeds of things like that. But that was just a number, and I was telling somebody recently that's interesting because the people I hang around with, like 40% of the people I know and spend time with on a regular basis, going to work out is part of their everything. But that's the community
So
I,
yeah,
right?
I'd say like literally if I have 40 friends, 38 of them work out.
Yeah, do
You
something
know?
active.
Hmm.
Mike, somebody messaged me on the side when I asked them about questions. It was a good friend of mine from jujitsu. Um, and I can see why they didn't want to post this because they didn't want to get political because I hate that nutrition gets political. But the question was, do you really think that the efforts of um what do you call them? What is it? They're doing the whatever RFK is trying to do. Who's that organization? I don't follow politics very well. The health, the
Health secretary, human health secretary.
health, whatever. Do you really think that the stuff they're trying to change in how food is produced and the additives in food, do you really think that can make a big change in health in people? Basically, like, is that really because it was a response that I put up that said, there, even though food processed, a lot of processed foods and additives in foods, there are still choices you can make that, like, you still kind of have a choice,
Hmm.
right? And I had a client tell me, well, I just hope, you know, RFK makes those good changes so we can all get healthy. I'm like, well, you chose ice cream last night, like, and
Yeah.
pizza last night. What are you talking about? Like, it's a choice. Do you think there is a big benefit to some of the regulation going towards changing how food is produced that can really move the needle for people to be healthy? Or is it just kind of something that you see as like, okay, it's a right step towards something? Not necessarily the main mover, but is it really going to do it?
Yeah, so I think the general conversation surrounding all of this is super beneficial because it helps people to understand, hey, what's in your food? You need to pay attention to it. And I think that's the most important takeaway from all of
So you're
this.
looking at it from the umbrella standpoint.
Yeah, just from a macro standpoint, just people talking about food, thinking about food, understanding that, hey, there's things on this label I should be aware of. Now, do I think removing high fructose corn syrup out of Coke and replacing it with cane sugar is going to do anything? No. Do I think that Steak and Shake changing over to beef tallow instead of canola oil or whatever else they've been using will make a difference? No. Um, do I think that getting rid of artificial colors in Lucky Charms and Fruit Loops will make a difference? No, but I would love to be wrong because I'm sure those people that are already consuming those foods are still going to continue to consume them. So, given that some of the early data that we have on certain artificial colors and flavors and potentially hyperreactivity in children, I would love to be surprised in 10 years where they say, hey, when we drop this out in 2027, whenever they have to get rid of it, oh yeah, we saw this sharp decline in ADHD in kids. Sure, I would love to be surprised. I just don't think those small little things really matter. At the end of the day, if someone is consistently choosing fast food and not monitoring their calories, it's going to be hard to not become overweight. Just as a point blank principle, if you're monitoring your calories, you can still lose weight and eat fast food. Just we've seen that done over and over and over again. Nutrition professors have done it. A guy lost weight on Twinkies and protein shakes. So yeah, always comes back to calories. But I think just the general conversation regarding this is at least leading people to pay attention and realize that just because a corporation is utilizing something doesn't mean it's the best choice for you. And you're starting to see lots of shifts in new protein bar brands that are now popping up with different ingredients in them. Removal of certain common allergens, for example, soluble corn fiber and Quest protein bars. You're seeing new protein bars pop up with different fiber sources and um, now the collagen space has gotten huge because lots of people have a dairy protein allergy, not just a lactose intolerance, but actual allergen to the protein structure in casein or whey. So I think there's good shifts happening. I think a lot of the extra flack that comes along for the ride is because we're challenging a lot of status quo and a lot of globally accepted norms. And just one tiny example that is hotly contested. Um, I think asking for open source data and randomized controlled trials that are placebo controlled without vaccines, I think asking for that data is 100% necessary and beneficial. And I think there's not a conspiracy theory surrounding that. If something works, prove that it works. I mean, simple as that. So that's just a small example. I'm not pro or anti-vaccine, but just as an example of like one of the hotly contested things that I think is beneficial is just the idea that if something works, show it. Show me the
Yeah.
data. And
Yeah.
so
Well,
same with
that's
the food
anything.
piece.
We
Same with the
take that
food
to
piece. If
anything.
something changes, show me the data.
Yeah. That's anything. Just show the data,
100%.
right?
Yep.
And like, I don't need redacted data. I don't need something that has four words on it with black squiggly lines throughout it for forever, right?
Yeah.
I don't need it to be the JFK assassination redacted information. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you hold that back, that's when you go, oh, there's a reason they're holding it back.
I mean, I'll give you a quick example. So during one of my rotations, these reps would come in constantly, all the time at lunch. So they'd want to talk to you for like 5 seconds. They bring you lunch, whatever, whatever. So they brought in this one drug, and it was a new drug, the fancy drug on the market, supposedly better than all the other drugs. So I thought, okay. So this was specifically for depression in this drug. And so, of course, the rep, sees my student badge. And so they just hand me stuff and just go right on and talk to the doc. So I'm flipping through, blah, blah, blah. And
They
I'm
don't know
looking.
what
And
they
so
hand it
I,
off to.
oh yeah, they just give me this whole folder of just stuff to flip through. So I'm like, okay, I want to see the actual raw data. And again, everything from pharmaceutical companies is only the data they release. It's not the raw data. So it's basically once they've made it through all the data, they pick and choose what they release. So I'm looking at this data on this drug, and so it was 6 weeks comparison between the two trial groups. And so I was like, well, what are we actually measuring here? And so it was basically a patient's subjective depression based on a questionnaire. And so at the end of 6 weeks, the patients that were on this special drug had I think it was a 3 or 4 point reduction in the questionnaire in terms of their depression score. So it went from like 43 and it was like 47 in the placebo group. So I just found it very interesting, just as an example of like, show me the data, but then make sure it's actually real data and it's measuring what we think it's measuring. And I try to emphasize principles with people. This is something across supplements, training, nutrition, all of it. Always have to look at the actual study design because in this case, it's kind of like, okay, so maybe it's a validated questionnaire, but was a 4 point drop in someone's subjective reported feelings on a questionnaire over 6 weeks due to the drug, or just due to the fact that other things in their life changed? Did we get rid of all those confounders? And so I always find those interactions interesting because as humans, we sell ourselves simple stories. And so this was an example of kind of like, oh yeah, look, see the data shows that it's so much better. Well, what's the sample size? How many people was it? How long did it last? And how did you measure it? So just as a general rule of thumb, talking about data and all those sort of things, those sort of interactions are very interesting. And I'm sure I'll have more here in the next few weeks with the transition of specialties. But yeah, it's always good to be skeptical and ask those questions because sometimes the way things are painted and what's actually there are two totally different colors. We're just not paying attention.
Mike, is it okay? And you can say, I'll know more in 11 days. As people come to us through our podcast or friends of ours or through the group or content, at what point can we start saying, hey, we have somebody you could probably get in touch with? Or if people say, hey, I really want to start meeting with Mike or go to where his office is, can we start doing that and letting people know that, hey, September 15th,
Yeah, sure.
Mike will be available and share like the link to the work that you're going to and the offices you'll be at
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff. I'm really excited. I hope this still your new boss still lets you come on here and do cool stuff, right? And talk with us and help our people. And sounds like a great fit for you. You got to be excited to actually start having conversations that you've had with people for the last 10 years, Mike, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Now doing it under, at a place where it can be your job and be your
yeah,
profession, do it. So hopefully we can have more of these as your time allows. You're very helpful. I've had multiple people reach out to me that I didn't even know you've had conversations with that have
Hmm.
said, Tate Blackman was one that reached out to me and was like, dude, thank Mike for the conversation he had with me on some things and my wife or some people. I'm like, I didn't even know that happened.
I didn't even remember that.
It was a long time
I
ago.
don't
And
remember.
like helped him so much, right? So, your willingness to give to people and help, I'm excited you start your job. We thank you for coming on. We hopefully we can do it more. Um, and then as soon as we can, we'll start sharing how to sit down with Mike. And
Yeah, we know that you have every other Friday off, so
yeah, yeah, yeah. Now you writing down.
schedule us in.
Yep, absolutely.
So I appreciate it, Mike, as always.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.